it's interesting because when you're looking at the West right now, we're seeing governments thrown out after one term. In India, we have the current government, the Prime Minister Modi, in for a third term. What do you see as the key differences? And also the fact that the democratic mandate in India, the legitimacy of India as then a global player in terms of negotiations, whether it is with the peace between Russia and Ukraine, because we're talking to both sides, something which the UK had very strongly opposed.
Well, I think Prime Minister Modi it's an incredible achievement to get elected in this current environment. Every other single incumbent government across the world has got booted out of office. Australia, the United Kingdom, it's going to happen in Canada to Trudeau, it's happened in America to the Democrats. So it is a massive achievement to remain in office, and it is testament to the economic reforms that are taking place in India and the fact that people are feeling the country is going in the right direction. I think India has a huge role to play in the future of geopolitics as the world's largest democracy. I would like to hear more from India in the global debate. And I think with a Trump presidency, there is an opportunity to reshape how international relations work. I'm a veteran of UN General Assemblies. I find they don't really achieve very much, and we need a new way of moving forward. And I very much want India to be a key part in that.
Because India has often talked about the double standards of the West in some ways. So whether it was in terms of India maintaining its relationship with Russia, and the fact that India has pointed out that it actually benefited the West because you got cheaper oil once India had actually processed it. And also the fact that what's happening currently with Canada, and again, the double standards that India feels that when we are dealing with terrorists on foreign soil, there's a very different standard when it comes from, say, Five Eyes or the West, and when it's supposed to what India is asked to do.
I do think there are double standards, absolutely, and I've written about this in my book. And the Foreign Office in Britain is guilty of dealing with different countries in different ways. I particularly talk about the US and Singapore. Every time I went to Singapore, there'd be a brief from the Foreign Office telling me that I should have a go at Singapore because they have the death penalty. And yet the death penalty exists in America. It is never in my brief from the Foreign Office to have a go at the Americans. And I said, I'm not going to go to Singapore and lecture Singapore on its domestic policies. And I also refuse to do that on India. And if you remember at the time, there was lots of push on climate change and India adopting net zero. I'm a net zero skeptic. I think it's been very damaging for the British economy. So I didn't want to go. And Britain is in no position to lecture India. So I very strongly agree. On the subject of Russia, I believe the reason Russia invaded Ukraine was weakness that was shown by the West, in particular by the United States, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the failure to take action when there was the invasion in the Donbass region in Ukraine. And I very strongly believe that Putin should not be allowed to win or be seen to win the war in Ukraine, because I think it would have huge knock-on effects for Iran and for China. And we're now seeing Iran, China, and Russia act together, and that is a huge danger to the West, also to India, and also to global stability.
Do you see a global shift of power now towards Asia? Do you think, in a sense, that when you've written about saving the West, but do you see that there is now a global shift of power where the superpowers of the future will be, say, the US, China, India?
There is definitely been a global shift of power, and regrettably, I think there's been a shift of power towards authoritarian regimes. We have never seen Iran so emboldened. We've never seen Russia, or in recent years, so emboldened, or indeed China. I would distinguish, though, between India and China.
Of course.
India is a democracy. India wants to see the rule of law protected, things like free speech. That is very different from what we're talking about with respect to China. And I think under President Trump, we're seeing a revival of US strength. So I do think we are going to see a changing world. I fear Europe is less powerful than it was. I think one of the reasons Europe is less powerful than it was is it's stymied its own economy. Germany took a terrible bet on outsourcing its power production and cheap gas to Russia. The industrial economy of Germany is now in serious trouble. So Europe needs to get its act together. Otherwise, we are not going to be part of any of these discussions. But certainly, I think the US and India are both on the rise.